This video is sponsored by Santa Cruz Software.
This is Kyle Hamrick for CreativePro, and this is a sneak peek of my session, Let's Get Moving, Approachable Animation and Video, for the Design and Marketing Summit happening online July 27th and 28th. We all know that animation and video grab a viewer's attention more than static images, so my session is all about ways to make creating these a little less intimidating to folks coming from a design background. Today we're going to dive right into the deep end by animating a Photoshop design in After Effects. Here in Photoshop, I've built a layered design with a background, a couple of type layers, these two borders, and then a texture layer overlaid on top. I made sure that the texture and borders both extend beyond the edges of the canvas, giving me more flexibility when I animate those layers. Switching over to After Effects, the interface does feel a little bit different, but it's probably more familiar than you might think. I'll start out by going to File, Import, and then choosing that Photoshop file. When this dialog pops up, I want to make sure to choose Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. Now it's created what's called a composition for me, and a folder containing all the layers from my Photoshop document. If I double-click the composition, it opens up into the viewer. And down here, you can see I have all the same layers in the same arrangement. But since we now also have to worry about time, they're on a timeline instead of just a layer stack. I'd like to make sure the composition is set the way I'd like, so I'll come up to Composition, Composition Settings. I'll set my frame rate to 12 frames per second and set the length of the composition to 3 seconds. I'd also like to quickly color code my layers, so it's a little easier to keep track of things. I'll just click on this little color chip right here and give each of these elements a unique color. I'll also take a second to lock that top texture layer, just so I don't accidentally grab that when trying to select something else. Now I'll do what the design says and get moving. I'll start with that word, moving. I'll select that layer down in the timeline. Since I want these text layers to start off screen and then move into place, I'm going to move my playhead up here to frame 8, which you can also see over here in this little timecode indicator. Up in the top right corner of the interface, you'll see a Properties panel, very similar to what you're used to from Photoshop or Illustrator. Here I can change different things about my layers or even animate them. I'll just click this little stopwatch icon next to Position, and then you might notice down in the timeline it's created what's called a keyframe, which will hang on to this value at this time. If I move my cursor back to 0, I can enter a different value by scrubbing the Y position value down until my text layer is hidden behind that border. I'll do a quick preview by hitting the spacebar and, ta-da, animation. I'll bring the playhead back to that frame 8 and select both of the Let's and Get layers. I'll do that same thing by coming up here, clicking the stopwatch to create keyframes, move the playhead back to frame 0, and I can also grab them directly in the viewer and just push them up until they're hidden. Another preview. Not bad. I think it might be more interesting if I offset these layers a bit, so I'll just drag this Get layer to the right 1, 2 frames. Grab Moving and move it up 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. Let's check that out. A little more dynamic, huh? I can also have these layers ease into their landings by selecting all 3 of these keyframes, right-clicking on any of them, and then choosing Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease. Or I could just hit the F9 key. There we go, just gives them a bit smoother landing. To make this into a perfect loop, I need to animate them back out, so I'll head up here towards the end of the timeline. You can also set keyframes right here in the timeline, so if I click one and drag down across all 3, you'll see it created keyframes for all 3 layers. I can hit the End key to jump to the very end of the timeline, and then I'll drag each one off screen the way I'd like. I'll push Moving off the right side here, and then grab both Let's and Get together and push them off to the left. One more preview. I wanted to take things a bit further, so I also chose to animate the positions of the top and bottom borders so they also loop perfectly. And I took advantage of what are called hold keyframes to animate the texture layer with kind of a poppy staccato style movement to give some overall energy. And I did all of this just by animating each layer's position property. To finish up, I just need to export the animation so I can show it off. I'll come up to Composition, Add to Render Queue. I'll choose this H.264 setting for my export, confirm my export location, and there we are, a perfectly looping animation. If you'd like to learn more about how you can use these and other techniques to bring your designs to life across a variety of apps, be sure to join me for the full session at CreativePro's Design and Marketing Summit happening online July 27th and 28th.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. And for thousands more how-to articles and tutorials, visit our website, creativepro.com, and become a member today. Thanks for learning with us.